Okay, I think it is getting live streamed. Start the recording. Hi, Shri. Great to
Hi,
have,
Srini.
as always, very good to meet you. Though this time we are meeting virtually. Uh, we are 1 minute, ahead. So the streaming has begun. We'll just wait for a couple of minutes for people to, kind of join in online, and then we can get started.
Sure thing.
Awesome. So you are currently in Chennai, Shri?
Yep, in
In
office in Chennai. So yeah.
Awesome. And for those who are actually, streaming in now, I had the privilege of visiting Shri's office last week. Uh, it's one of the best offices I have seen in Chennai. So when you're in Chennai, do kind of cook up a reason to go and visit Rocketlane office. You won't be disappointed.
Yeah, always welcome to meet here.
Yes, and you will actually, I'm sure you'll walk back with some good nuggets of information that will basically, kind of enlighten you at various levels. At least that has been my experience with Shri every time I have met him. Uh, and that's why I was really eager to get him on this discussion channel. Anyways, we were 3:30 and, so welcome everyone. I'm going to, start on time. So, uh, just for your, for your knowledge, guys, my name is Srinivasan Narayan. I am the co-founder and CEO of Good Meetings. Good Meetings is an online video platform that helps sales guys sell 10x better on video, right? Uh, we are also a B2B SaaS company. And just like most of you who are streaming in today, we also basically, build from India, but for the world. We are also basically bridging the India-US product corridor. And we started this series called Road to SaaS. Uh, we started this series called Road to SaaS basically a couple of months ago when I realized during my journey as an entrepreneur, as a B2B SaaS entrepreneur, that almost all the B2B SaaS founders, not just in India but other regions of the world, uh, want to sell into one of the biggest markets of the world, which is the US, right? And there are multiple facets to kind of that selling and that journey to happen. I am in that journey, me and my team, right? And I do realize that there are other companies in the same journey, maybe many steps ahead of us. Certain companies are a few steps behind us, but fundamentally all of us are trying to bridge that divide, right? And I realize that there are so many questions that crop up in our mind when we try to basically kind of build a global product, uh, that it would be best to get experts who've been that, done that, who've actually experienced that journey and learn from them. This is in many ways our attempt to publicly learn from people who've been that, done that, right? Not only incorporate it in our own B2B SaaS product and our own GTM and our own journey in general, but also ensure that that knowledge gets disseminated to each one of you. So that's what the whole initiative of Road to SaaS is all about. This whole series of episodes began a few weeks ago when we got Vinod Muthukrishnan, who's the founder of Cloud Cherry, to talk to all of our subscribers about how to build in the India-US product corridor. And I thought that the best way to top it up uh, would be to get another towering personality, uh, Srikrishnan Ganesan. I think for people who follow the B2B SaaS market in India and globally, I don't think Sri Krishna needs any introduction, but I'll still kind of basically just speak briefly about him. Uh, I think Shri is a College of Engineering India and I am Bangalore pass out. He started his career as a product manager, and then he's been a serial entrepreneur. His previous company, Conotor, was acquired by Freshworks, where he was leading FreshChat. And post that, he started, a very exciting company, a category creating company called Rocketlane, uh, which is basically, kind of successfully, which has been basically successfully bridging the India-US product corridor. And she already has a lot of customers in the US. And today we would be discussing in more detail about how, Shri and Rocketlane acquired the first 20 customers in the US. Uh, Over to you, Shri. Shri, if you could speak a little bit about yourself, introduce yourself to the audience here, and also talk a little bit about Rocketlane. I think then that would set the right context for us to get started.
Well, thanks, Srini. And one quick factual correction: I didn't go to CEG. I went to a college called SPCE, which is also part of Anna University. But yeah,
my apologies.
No worries. I just want to make sure it doesn't look like I'm spreading false info about where I studied. But it's been a fantastic journey this time for us with Rocketlane. So my background, as Srini said, started in product management, but did one more SaaS startup before this one from 2012 to 2015, which was acquired by Freshworks. Spent 4.5 years at Freshworks growing that business. Did one major pivot in between, after which that business really took off and became the fastest product in Freshworks to reach various revenue milestones. And that sort of inspired us to go out and do one more, because we realized a lot of mistakes we had done in our previous journey. We learned, I would say, Freshworks was like a SaaS school for us, 4.5 years, and then decided, okay, with all that we've learned, and of course, I think there were a lot of things we learned and borrowed from the playbook, but also things we learned, hey, Freshworks would have done XYZ better from close quarters. So, taking all that, we said, okay, let's try one more. This time we'll optimize for momentum, like what we've seen happen at Freshworks, and build like a new, hopefully a business that can be super large and inspiring the way, we saw companies like Freshworks, ChargeBee, etc. do it. So that's the journey we are on. It's been 2 years since we started the company, but it's been 1 year and a month since we launched our product. And it's been super exciting to win customers globally, but also we sort of started in a new category, which was just emerging, and we've quickly, got into a very strong position in the category as a leader of sorts. So that's been, very rewarding to experience, and hopefully, we scale things from here and continue in that spot. But quickly about what Rocketlane is. So we are a customer onboarding platform. Think of it this way: if you're a SaaS company or tech company selling to mid-market or enterprise customers, there is always a project that you need to run with that customer to get them to value. You need to, configure things, customize things, integrate, migrate data, set them up for success, help them with adoption. So there is a whole plan that you need to execute with that customer collaboratively. And we are a collaborative project execution platform where you can have playbooks that you follow to the T. So it ensures every customer is, taken to value the right way. There are broader use cases for what we believe, but we started with this client onboarding, customer onboarding as sort of like the first wedge to, get into this much broader project collaboration market.
Awesome. I think that gives us a great gist of, what Rocketlane does and about your journey. I just want to start things off by going back in time, Shri, and wanted to really understand from you, right? How did you find your way into this exciting world of tech and SaaS, right? What was your motivation to get into the world of SaaS in general, right? And customer onboarding in particular?
Right. I think our previous startup journey, so both startups last time and this time are with the same co-founders. So the previous journey was done starting from a very different place, different know-how. Knew nothing about SaaS, bootstrapped the whole way, versus this time it's like from the get-go, raised money, sort of knew what we were doing, or at least believe so. And the last time we actually didn't start out with SaaS. We started building a B2C product to take on WhatsApp. And that was our background before. All of us had been in B2C, places like Zynga, Rediff, and eBay, etc. So we started that way, but somewhere I think we were very actively on all the startup community stuff, hacker news, etc. And we saw there was like an increasing number of successful companies that were building something cool and selling it to other tech companies, startups, etc. And so we had this messaging product that wasn't taking off. We turned it into an SDK and started giving it to other apps that were mushrooming, because mobile apps were starting to be really big in 2012, 2013. So that's how it started. So we accidentally got into SaaS because we didn't find success with our B2C company. And I think this is somehow common to a lot of startups from Chennai. A lot of them start out B2C and then turn to B2B. I think it's like there is some conservative mindset where I think you need to be very delusional to run a B2C startup and succeed. B2B slightly more less delusional to think you can win.
I'll tell you another spin to that story, right? You talk about Chennai startups being that. I fundamentally believe that, it is also true about second-time entrepreneurs. First-time entrepreneurs, many of us are exposed to the consumer internet story because we use these apps, right? Day in and day out. So somewhere within us, there is this element of inspiration that we can build something like this. And you basically, with all your bravado, take the leap, right? And then you realize that this whole B2C game maybe requires certain chops that you don't have, right? And you realize that maybe I should think more about revenue, more about selling to companies. So I always believe that, a first-time entrepreneur maybe is more inclined to build a consumer internet business, and a second-time entrepreneur basically is more inclined to think about revenues first, having burnt his or her fingers, and they generally start thinking about B2B and SaaS and other, offerings.
Interesting. Yeah, I think, first time B2C is almost a little bit like the movie business, hit or miss, versus I think B2B, we can iterate our way to get somewhere.
Yes, absolutely. Great. I mean, this is amazing, Shri, knowing your journey. A little bit, little bit about the initial years of Rocketlane, right? Wanted to spend some time on that. Could you walk us through, more about what Rocketlane does? And, how did you get this problem? And the reason I ask this is also because, what you're building is something which is rare and unique, a category creating product from India, right? Historically, we've actually seen a lot of Me Too products being built out of India, right? Where the markets are clearly defined. Existing incumbents are already there globally. But, Indian products basically enter those markets with some unique advantages, right? And they have actually, stood their ground, as opposed to certain category creating products, which are few and far between. And obviously the numbers are increasing now. So would really like to understand, how did the idea of Rocketlane come about, right? What was the motivation? And when did you really decide to take the plunge?
Right. I would say the sequence of things is, we sort of decided in 2019 that we've had like a fantastic run. The last 2 years at Freshworks, after we relaunched as Fresh Chat, were amazing in terms of growth, in terms of what we saw it does to people in our team, how it helps them, pushes them, forces them to develop and take on. And then we decided, okay, what if we do one more and experience this? So it was first, let's do one more, and then we started thinking about what we want to do. And one of the problems staring at us was, we were doing a lot of mid-market and lower end of enterprise sort of implementations that year. The product had grown quickly, and we had the likes of Discover Cards and Klarna and Nokia, and many big customers globally. And I could never be confident about how things were going with those customers. I'd have to ask someone. There was no one place to go and see how they were doing. I would need to know which spreadsheet to open to see if things are on track, or which email to open to know the true status update. And still, I wouldn't get a sense of the customer sentiment. Are they feeling anxious and nervous about things? Are things going well and smooth? So, there was a serious lack of visibility. And then I understood, even for the people who are running those projects, not for just the business owner, but even for the people actually on the project, they were guessing, are things going okay? Should I escalate? Should I, bring this to the attention of someone? And how do they stay on top of things? That was also hard, because there was one conversation happening on a Slack shared channel. There was email messages being exchanged. There was a spreadsheet. There was an Asana project. There was, things all over the place. And it was just so hard to stay on top of work coming out of like the Google Docs and the Slack channels and, emails and so on. So we said, hey, we've seen certain plays work at Freshworks. One of them was like a unification play, making like an all-in-one experience for a very, clear function for like one role. We'd also seen how, because, there's like customer-facing experiences. There were certain elements in every customer-facing experience. There's like a concept of a CSAT, concept of private versus shared, things like that, which did not exist in the collaboration world and project management world. So we took those two ideas and said, hey, what if we purpose-built project collaboration software that is all in one, that puts, this notion of customer centricity also into the experience, because it's a very key part of the customer journey, where it's the first partnership they're experiencing with you, and yet it's like a black box to them till like a status update email comes or a spreadsheet is shared with them. So what if we take concepts of customer centricity and make this all-in-one purpose-built experience for running repeatable customer-facing projects? So we sort of said, okay, docs plus conversations plus project management, but purpose-built for customer-facing projects. So that was the concept. We used some, proof points. The fact that Slack shared channels in the first quarter of their launch had like 75% of the customers adopted, showed us that there was like a stark, there was this huge need, pent-up demand for like better ways to collaborate across companies. So, took those things into mind, that started, reaching out to people who were, and this we did in like early 2020, right? So we were talking to many companies, like I think 60 companies we reached out to, and started having conversations about how they run their onboarding, what are the challenges, and started learning what's the priority around this as well. Because when you ask about something, you will hear that that is a challenge, but that doesn't mean that's a high priority problem. So we started trying to understand, hey, are investors aware of this problem? Are investors and founders talking about it in board meetings? Why is it a challenge? What is the ROI for them if they get this right? So that's where we build confidence that it's not just like a person performing a function and a leader saying, yeah, if you solve this, this will be good. But are they already trying other ways to solve those problems? What sort of things have they tried? All of that gave us a lot of confidence that there was a real problem. There was a gap. It was being discussed in like board meetings, like what's the time to value? Why is there a gap between live ARR and contracted ARR? All of those were questions coming up. And that told us that, hey, this is a severe, problem that people will want to solve. So let's go and build that.
Very nice. Amazingly insightful. Some learnings basically include that you can do your homework in a very inexpensive fashion by reaching out to, I think, potential customers. I mean, 60 is a massive number. Even when we started Good Meetings, before we actually built the product itself, we probably spoke to around 100 sales guys at various levels before we actually crystallized, the idea. So completely echo that sentiment, Shri. Great. I mean, now we know what Rocketlane does. Now we know what was the motivation behind building Rocketlane. I wanted to understand how did you get your first customer, and was it an Indian customer, right? And how did you move from the first customer to the second, third, and fourth customer?
Right. So I think the first person who agreed to buy is different from the first customer.
That's right.
But the first person who agreed to buy and agreed on the pricing, I would say that way, that was like the point where we understood, okay, we can sell this. Because there was like a few weeks where we were giving it to people and saying, hey, why don't you try it out, and so on. We ourselves didn't have the confidence to go out and ask them for money. We wanted to see, will they get to value, and then they will start paying us, etc., which is a mistake in hindsight. You need to be confident about what you build, and you need to start asking for, like, okay, let's talk about how much you're willing to pay for this, and let's get you to pay for it, even if it's early, right? Yeah, it's early stage, I'll give you a discount because it's early stage, it's fine. But no reason to say use it for free till you get to value or whatever, right? So instead, we should be confident. That was one learning. But this was a US based like the founder was in US, the company was being built in the US, but Indian origin founder backed by one of our VCs. So we did have a in with them already in a way. So it was a warm intro from one of their advisors. The advisor was introduced by our VC. The advisor, identified that, hey, I advise this company which has this problem. So I'll put you in front of them. If the founder likes it, they're going to buy. And that's what happened, right? So the founder loved the product first demo. He said, hey, love this, gonna buy. And let's discuss pricing. And the way that happened, I think one of the important things that clicked over there was we had practiced demoing quite a bit. So for like 7-8 months before we launched the product, we had already been doing, actually a whole year before we launched the product, we had been doing demos, using prototypes, using like whatever was half product, half prototype. At every stage, we kept showing it to people and getting feedback. So we knew where people's eyes pop when they see something, all of that. So the product was actually ready and we had this conversation. It was a very fluent demo where we could showcase the product well. But more importantly, the product UX UI was very good, right? And that's what I think made that person feel I can trust and buy because I think this team has it in them. I have a slide. Sometimes I've shown like building global products, from India. I've done some presentations on that even while I was at Freshworks. And the front end should look really good.
Yes.
It's okay if you have like all the mess underneath, bugs, issues, all of that is fine initially. It's understood. But people trust when they see that there is a beautiful product, right? So beautiful meaning full featured, good UI UX. When that is there, people automatically see you as, okay, I know they may not be there yet, but I can trust that this team, values quality and, they take the leap of faith. So that's one thing I really believe in. And our first hire was actually a designer, right? And, an excellent designer at that. So I think that helped. I would say first two or, this was a US customer, but Indian origin founder. We had like a few more buying from India, but our product hunt launch, like the same week we sort of launched on product hunt. That was like the real impetus for us to, sell globally. So we did a good, well-planned product hunt launch, made a nice video for it. So we invested some time and energy to get that PH launch done well. We also announced our seed funding round on the same day. So a year after the funding actually happened, we announced it on the same day. And so the two played into each other. The news was out there. When people visited the website, they could see we were number one on product hunt. So they will also go and upvote. So it became like a nice virtuous cycle for us.
Very interesting. There's so many learnings and so many things I can also associate with. I'll tell you certain things because I think it's important to bring these out. The first thing is the fact that you said by the time your product was ready, you had already demoed it so many times that it became child well, almost like child play for you, right? When it actually was being sold to the first client. And this is something that even I have learned the hard way that, while product building should happen and will continue, as founders, we have to keep selling, right? Selling should never stop. And this is something I learned over a period of time. Even if you have mockups, just show it to people, gather their feedback, because that way you're aligning your product with what the market wants during the product building phase itself, right? And doing rapid iterations rather than doing it in kind of a waterfall model where you're doing everything, releasing it, and then realizing that, hey, you know what, this hypothesis doesn't work, and the market needs something else, and your entire thing basically then goes for a toss. This is something I learned the hard way, so I just thought I should bring it up. And I mean, now we are obviously much better off. The
I
second thing was
probably share. Sorry, go on.
sorry, you wanted to complete something?
No, I didn't know you were adding some more points. So
Yeah.
after
The
that, I
second
will.
thing was around pricing actually. And it is so interesting to, also see you say the same thing. When we started out, even we were, kind of wary of talking about pricing. We were like, that should not dissuade the customer from, using the product, let them use it first. But over a period of time, I realized that, pricing and pricing discovery more than strategy is all about courage, right? You should have the courage and the right reason to basically price your product, right? I mean, you're offering something which is adding value to the organization, so that it is only justified that you kind of offer a price. And as you rightly said, you can then give a heavy discount or even a free trial, right? So that just in case you want to give the comfort. But I think there is no shame in actually quoting a price for a product that you're building. And I do know that I have done that myself initially, right? Where I stopped short of even talking about price because I thought that let me just prioritize growth. But when you're in the B2B space, in the SaaS space, at the end of the day, you're building it to get revenues for the company. And if the product is good and if it is adding value, more often than not, companies are willing to actually pay you, earlier than you even expected.
Absolutely. And
That
yeah,
was, and the third thing was the designer thing. I think we also learned it the hard way. At least when we started selling in the US, we realized that having a perfectly designed product goes a really long way in creating a massively positive impression about your offering, right? A product with rough edges might work in countries like India. That has been my experience, because the cultures are different, because the paying capacities are different. But when you're launching your product globally, then having a very clean UI UX product which appeals to the masses, which looks, you know, uh, which which basically has finesse, right? And which appeals in every aspect is super important. And the backend might be kind of still lagging. That's okay, but the first impression that you give about the product is super important when you're selling globally, especially in the US markets. That is also something that we realized and worked upon. So all wonderful points here.
yeah, I think one thing to be aware of, for those selling into US for the first time as well is, yeah, that UX. It's not about. It helps if you have like a lot of features and capabilities and the product looks good. But what US is used to is in their market, the most products launch as MVPs, like a very minimal viable product. And then for the MVP, they still want to judge, hey, is this a good team? Right. And the way they probably end up doing it is by looking at the UX and feeling, okay, looks like a quality team is building this. Versus in India, most companies which buy prioritize, okay, do you have all the features exactly the way I want it? US companies don't do that because they're used to buying software which is earlier stage, because they're used to buying it before it's truly ready, because the teams over there build MVPs first. Over here, we have the ability to not have to build an MVP, because for the same money raised, we can build a lot more product. We can hire a larger engineering team. I think that's a huge advantage for us. One of the things we, I think, did really well is when we launched, we had a very mature product. We had mature in the sense full featured, lots of capabilities. It was already ahead of like other products in the space with, you know, a whole bunch of new dimensions and capabilities in it. And we could afford to do it. We took, 10, 11 months to build and launch that. But it was still, we believe it was the right decision, because when we launched, for people, it looked like this is a company that's been around for a while. So the US market could not believe that this was a new product. They didn't assume it was new. Even the website, it looked matured. We already had like a podcast season, 12, 13 episodes on the website. We had lots of blog posts. So anyone coming there felt, oh, this company must have been around for 2 years already. So it doesn't look like a young company at all, even at launch. We also had a community, right? So that was an important part of the play, because even when we got into conversations, we could talk about, hey, by the way, we've been running this community, you should join it. And we launched the community 9 months before we launched the product. So all of that helped create this impression, like our marketing was ahead of product at that time, right? So we looked like a much more mature company.
Yeah, it's more like saying, have your distribution sorted out before you even launch your product. All right.
Okay.
First question coming in from the audience, Shri. So this is from Omkar. He asks, can you share what key changes you did in your UI UX for Rocketlane before launch in the US?
Okay. We didn't do an India launch and US launch. So it was essentially one launch overall. I would say some of the key things were we had these wow moments built into the product, right? So we had been doing calls from days, from recording calls that we did from the first like chat that we had with someone about the space. We had been recording everything because the three founders, it was like the start of the pandemic. We wanted to make sure we were all on the same page as to what customers are saying, how they're reacting, all of that. But that became a practice for us. Every call from 2020 March is recorded and available till today. So that anyone on the team who wants context on the problem, how is the customer articulating the problem? How are they solving it today? Everything is documented and available in these videos. And we created like highlight reels of those that we shared with our team members. So they could think about innovative ways to solve those problems and come up with like nice experiences. And then we started recording how those people are reacting to the experience. One example is we have something called a presentation mode, where if you want to showcase a project plan that you have to onboard a customer, usually that's shared as a spreadsheet, or like on a PPT, you put like those chevrons and say, hey, first we will do configuration, then we will do integrations, then we will train you, go live, something like that, right? And you have a bunch of activities. We made it part of the product to do like a interactive walkthrough of the journey. And that's not there in any other product in this space, right? Like no project tool has it. So that became a wow moment that we could showcase. Like that, we built like 3 or 4 key wow moments where if we do a demo, the customer understands, hey, this was built keeping me in mind. This is helping me with my job to be done.
Makes sense. Great. So we spoke about how you got your first, few customers, Shri. So one more thing is, leveraging your network. As you rightly said, your investors introduce you to an advisor who introduced you to the company that, finally became your first customer. But how did you then start scaling, right? From your first couple of customers, how do you move from 2 to 10? And were you looking global from day one, or it was more like a region agnostic product? Whoever came inbound, you decided whether this would, because you did create a lot of buzz through your launch on Product Hunt, through your communities. So was it then the inbound channel that started helping you? How was the next step taken? And during this whole phase, from moving from 2, 3 users or customers to 10, 20 customers, were you completely region agnostic? because one thing that we faced, at least in our product, is that the requirements from let's say an Indian market is very different from the requirements that come from a US market, right? And the playbooks are really different. And given that most teams are small and they want to be focused, they finally end up kind of concentrating only on one market. Uh, you know, uh, so was that also something that crossed your mind, or that is not a problem because the product is location agnostic?
Yeah, I think we had an advantage that we had built and launched SaaS products a couple of times before, actually 3 times to be very precise. So we knew what people will ask for, what is okay not to do, even if they ask for it, what will they put up with, etc., especially for global markets, right? And so we had that advantage. But I would say we also prioritized the US market from early because we knew in our minds at least a product that wins in the US market wins the right to win globally. Typically, right? You get the best logos and then everyone else trusts you by default. Versus if you're winning in India, you still need to convince and say, hey, this is why you should use me in the US. The other way around is usually easier.
Yes.
So we prioritized US. It was all inbound for our first whole bunch of customers. So one thing was the PH launch itself gave us a lot of leads. I think around 200 decent leads from which we converted 30 customers. And we had to really push, right? So it was just 3 of us doing all the pre-sale demo and sales conversations. And we really pushed hard, set ourselves a very aggressive target and made it happen, right? So it was hustle it was not a formula, it was more hustle. But those global leads came in from the uh, PH launch. And we also said any investor reaching out during that, after the PH launch, because we were number one, a lot of people reached out saying, hey, I know it looks like you just raised, but let's get to know each other, etc. So every one of them, we will ask, hey, by the way, I see your portfolio has these companies. Can you introduce us to XYZ? Right. So we made sure every conversation we had an ask of an introduction, and we did that for other people taking demos as well, right? Because that first PH launch thing, some people were just curious and came to it as well. But we will ask them, hey, who do you think in your network will benefit? Can you put me in touch with them? So those things actually gave us some traction. So that was how the initial thing started. But from those initial customers, we learned from those initial demos and conversations, we learned how do we do those demos better and some basics that you need to do. Okay, we knew we need to list on like, is there a lot of background noise from my side?
No. I think we can hear you clearly.
Okay. So one of the things we did was we listed on Capterra, listed on G2. All of that we did it as like we need to do these basics, right? And then you start getting more inbound from there as well, because people who are looking for a category is a strong signal of someone who's interested in buying a product in that space. So we started pushing our presence in those categories also, because we said, hey, first 30 customers, if you're getting discount by day 15, you need to also go and do a review for us. We're not going to police how you do the review, you do a genuine review, but we're giving you discount. You need to make sure reviews happen on time. So we started using that as a tactic to get reviews faster, and that helps prop up our presence on G2. Now we are a leader on G2, like clearly ahead of everyone else in terms of number of reviews. So that worked. And our sales team prioritized pushing customers to get those reviews. Even after they sold, they could have dropped the ball. But they knew that getting reviews from the customer is going to help them tomorrow to showcase us as a leader and get that deal won. So that helped as well. Those would be some things I would say. And maybe the other learning for us in terms of US customer selling is some of them judge, right? So they're looking at, okay, how many people do you have on LinkedIn in US versus India? So they're actually looking at things like that and they're buying. So you need to overcome the bias that they have proactively. So once we learned this was happening, and there's actually a customer who dropped a mail at 2 a.m. saying, "Hey, can we get on a call?" My colleague was replying saying, "Here's my Calendly for tomorrow." Right? I actually just before that, luckily, I replied saying, "Here's the Zoom link."
Yeah.
And we got on a call, and she said one of our competitors had mentioned that all our support team is in India, and so we won't be able to support them well. And now we've demonstrated that, hey, we are getting on a call in your time zone. What are you talking about? And we also shared that we come from a background of customer support, having worked in Freshworks. And you need to say something that convinces them that you have round the clock support. So we can say, hey, by the way, US company will support you only during your 9 to 5 hours. We will support you around the clock. That's an advantage. So we are better for you in terms of support. So I think that's actually a real advantage that we should all use, right? Because
Absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, it just ensures that we are there we have your back 24/7. And that's a very interesting thing that you mentioned, and I'll tell you why. Because even we face this issue, and there are some hacks that a lot of entrepreneurs do, right? I mean, obviously, many of these many entrepreneurs in the B2B SaaS ecosystem keep shuttling between India and US. And justifiably, one of the hacks that they do is on LinkedIn, they'll actually change their location to San Francisco or Bay Area, right? Right. All of us have done it, right? And it actually does wonders. Trust me, right? It does wonders. These are small hacks, but they go a long way in creating a lasting impression about your product. And I have also, kind of faced this. Uh, and I'll give you a very good example. One of my co-founders, he actually kind of, we got a customer and he was sending a mail, and he suggested a time like, can we meet at 9 a.m. IST, which is, 9:30 p.m. PST. And I said, no, 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 cut all this. We should only be thinking in PST, right? So can we meet at 9:30 p.m. PST if it works for you, right? Because these are all, impressions, small things that go a long way in creating an impression that you think globally from day one. Uh, so, oh, wonderful. There are a bunch of questions coming in, Shri, and I want to cover all of them. Let me start with Rakesh from Bizongo. He asks, can you also spend a little bit more time on helping us understand how you built your community from scratch? I'm also part of that community. So, yeah, you should definitely talk about that. How did you get the first few people to get interested in your community and spend time there?
So we had, some, friends in SaaS, put us in touch with their leaders in this implementation function, just so that we can learn from them, right? And we created the Slack group first, saying, hey, let's just have these people who we're going to take inputs from on a regular basis. We'll have them as part of a Slack thing so that we can chat with them easily. And to incentivize them or make them feel good about engaging with us, spending time with us, we sent them some wonderful books, just to say, hey, thank you for your time. And that was our way of showing our love. We sent like a Rocketlane t-shirt and some nice books. Now they started engaging with us. They were excited about us. That was good. But we had a long journey before we could launch, which is why the idea of community was, coming to us strongly. What we did was we got one founder, like what you're doing today with me, getting me to talk about US sales. I got one of my founder friends I was speaking to casually, and he said, hey, our implementation used to take 6 months, now it's 6 weeks. I was like, okay, how did you do that? And he told me a story. It was super interesting. And I said, can you tell this to more people? And sort of got him messaged on a few WhatsApp groups asking anyone wants to join. People joined. There were lots of questions. And then we said, hey, by the way, we want to continue the conversation. Time is up now, but you can join this Slack group. So the events that we started doing this twice a month once we saw it working. So the people who joined those joined the community. Then they would ask questions in the community. No one would answer. I would answer. I would tag people. First 4 months was shameful. If I go there, I can see only I am posting questions. I am tagging people to answer. that's how it is. But on day one, when I had one marketing lead and we hired an intern eventually, I told them very clearly, it is going to look bad, but don't worry. Someday this will change. So we knew it's going to look bad initially, but at some point there is enough people, you hit that critical mass and then things start working. So it's about persistence. And then we started doing outreach, like SDR to sell the product. The same way we were doing the SDR work to get people into the community, it's far easier, right, than selling product. You just need to say, hey, we have people from Zendesk, ChargeBee, Gainsight in the community. Why don't you join? It so happens that these are people in India from those companies. It doesn't matter. The global folks will start joining. So we, prioritized making the community global as well, because initially it was like 70% India. Then we said, okay, let's make sure everything truly appears global, and it's important. So by the time we launched, we had 700 people in the community. It was like a nice global presence.
Awesome. And I can vouch for that. I have built communities earlier, and we are also, building communities currently in our initiative. And, initial days could be a big struggle. And they could be, also really, you need to actually overcome your, and I call this your ego, and just, be shameless that. But over a period of time, it pays massive dividends. Uh, the next question is basically from Anshuman Pandey. He asks, can you talk a bit more about the sales stack of finding customers in the US? Like, what is it that you do for lead generation, for sequencing? Also, advice for anyone who hasn't written cadences before for reach outs.
We didn't do any outbound. It hasn't worked well for us. Anything outbound was through warm connects. So anyone talking to us, we're saying, hey, I see you're connected to this person. Can you reach out? That's the only kind of outbound we did. Now I'm confident we can do better outbound because we have some nice logos and stories and ROI cases and so on. But at that time, I didn't have the confidence, to be honest. Plus, inbound started kicking in early. So we were just servicing demand that was coming in. And that's far easier to do. That's my biggest lesson from the Freshworks journey. Like if things are inbound, yes, everything has a cap. Inbound also has a cap. And someday you may need to look at outbound. Depends on the category. New categories, usually inbound is hard, but luckily for us, G2 and established that category and there was some momentum in it. So there is luck. If I had tried this in 2020, maybe it wouldn't have worked. 2021, when we launched, market was a little more ready. So that's why I'm able to tell a happy success type of story. But if I had launched 1 year earlier, probably it would have been a very different story. So yeah, it's partly luck as well, to be honest. But inbound started working. We had written a lot of good content, made videos. So all of that mattered, right? So we had solid content on day one, even to put up on G2 about ourselves, etc. And of course, we started also going to events. So that's another thing we did early. Even month before launch, we were a sponsor at Gainsight Pulse, showing demos, right? So we did 3 events in the first quarter of launch, and we got those lists of emails from those people. We did do outbound to that list. That didn't convert immediately, to be honest, but it got us some demos, some interest, which converted much later, like the next year, etc. But it gave us a confidence, right? And it gave us a lot of people in the community, by the way. So our sequence, one mail will be about just, hey, I can do an onboarding audit for you. One email was like, hey, help is a Slack community away. One email is, hey, do you want a demo? Blah, blah. So there's like a lot of content offerings, and then interspersed, you also had like something about, hey, why don't you check out our product? And I'm seeing that if you're confident about your product, you can offer something. If you know you're reaching out to the right person, you can say, hey, $50 voucher for your time, or hey, you stand to win something. You stand to win all access pass to Gainsight Pulse if you take a demo. So things like that do work to some extent, like incentivize them to get on a demo. If you're confident that after seeing the product, they will want to buy the right persona.
Makes sense. Shri, I also, wanted to touch upon, differences in the Indian markets versus US markets. A lot of questions around that have already been asked by people, and a couple of questions now have also come in. Your take on, why the markets are different and how they are different, right? And for companies who are thinking of going global, how do they ensure that, they build the right playbook, especially for a massive market like the US, right, sitting in India? First is why do you think the markets are different? Second is, how do you think they are different? And then therefore, what are the playbooks one can build?
They are different in some ways. There are a lot of similarities also, depending on who you're selling to. For example, you're selling to SaaS. I think SaaS buyers in India and globally are not so different. One difference maybe is that we sort of throw bodies at the problem. They prefer to make things system driven from early, right? So they will prioritize. There is a systematized way to do something. They're open to doing that earlier. We will say, no, for now, I will just put people on it. I will come to putting a system in place when I scale much larger. So that's one difference I've seen. Secondly, I think over there, because the people time saving as ROI works really well in the US, because the cost of one additional full-time employee is so high, right? So if you have the efficiency story, especially in a recessionary period like this, that's great. Versus even like a revenue unlock story versus this, I think very clear ROI if you're able to say, hey, I'm going to save you 2 full-time employees when you scale from here to where you want to be, and that works well over there versus over here.
I think there is a joke that I keep sharing with people when they ask me about the India versus US cultural nuances. That actually ties into your whole idea of efficiency. It is said that there are two kinds of markets. There is one market where the decision maker has a maid coming, has a driver coming, has a nanny coming, right? So therefore, all of his or her chores are outsourced. And there is another market where the decision maker has to go home. He or she has to do the dishes. He or she has to pick the kids from school. He or she has to cook, help in cooking. He or she has to clean the house, right? Always target the second market, because there, those people actually prioritize their time over money, while people in the first markets always prioritize their, money over time. And they have all the time in the world. So they'll keep negotiating with you till they get a deal that is favorable to them. Very nice. I just, wanted to, also, there was a question from Nitish. What do you think is the best method for lead generation from a channel perspective for a B2B SaaS company? We speak about product market fit. We also speak about product channel fit, right? So what is your take on channels? And how do you think a company can ascertain which is the right channel for them in a scientific way?
Yeah, I think it depends on who you're targeting, right? If you're targeting mid-market and enterprise, then usually they are not searching for solutions because they're used to getting pitched to. They may search if it's like acute. So you need to be showing up in the results over there. So make sure you're optimizing for that. But you can't depend on that to grow the business, right? So in that sense, if you're mid-market or enterprise focused, then you need to crack outbound. You need to crack like field, like events and stuff like that well. At the same time, if you're targeting SMB, those are not going to work, right? So you're not going to efficiently outbound into them. You're not going to efficiently serve them in like events. Sometimes if you have a very, very quick one demo and close sort of cycle, then events could work, like large footfall events you can go and sell. But then you want to really prioritize inbound content, things like that as driving the customer finding you. Now, early on, I still think it needs to be, direct sales, not through like partners and other kinds of channels. So it's mostly about hey, are customers finding you and coming inbound, or are you reaching out to them? Are you doing events? Those are the kind of channels we're talking about. Uh, I think if you're able to get in front of people through ads, or through like listings and stuff like that, or your content gets in front of them, that's you know that's great, right? Like I think that's important to be able to crack for especially if you want to have tons of customers and you want to scale that. uh, that's good. But if you have like high ACV, smaller number of customers, targeted vertical, things like that, then you can do outbound and events. That those, I think, for early stage companies, these are the main ways, I would say. Of course, uh, we now have community led and so on as being proposed as channels. I think it's hard to engineer that in every category, uh, but we can try.
Got it. Uh, Another question that kind of came in was basically from you know Pratik Gupta. He asked, "What do you do when your product is a little bit servicey? How do you still get your 5 customers in the US? Any change in strategy in such cases?"
uh, I think as long as you're showing what job will be done and you're inspiring confidence around how you will deliver, right? So if it's like, hey, I need to configure these reports for you and deliver it on a regular basis, then you can, if you can show them how you're tracking that, how you're sort of, going to deliver on time, and what happens if you don't, etc., then they will get confidence that, okay, you are, capable of delivering it on time. Looks like you know what you're doing, right? So you want to have that, create that sense of, oh yeah, yeah, we know how to do it. And so you're not sharing them, like when they ask you how you will deliver, you aren't just winging it, but you actually have like a plan you're showcasing to them.
The next question was from Deepak. How do you overcome the hurdle of networking with IT professionals apart from trade shows in the US? Are there any forums that are open to new vendors, especially those who are outside of US and want to sell in the US?
So as I said, I've piggybacked on like investors, potential investors, anyone reaching out as like, hey, everyone is going to hear my pitch and everyone is going to hear who else can you introduce me to, and we get them thinking about it. So that's one way. I've seen like certain kind of outreach on email also work better, where it's one part is hyper personalized, like the intro, you know you're first flattering them in some way, saying, hey, I heard this podcast of yours and you said XYZ. So show that you've paid attention to them, you listen to them, and then that's why you're reaching out to them. That sort of tends to work slightly better. And of course, if you drop names of competitors that you're engaging with, so that helps as well, right, to get conversations going. But other than that, forums for networking, I would say, depends on industry, and if it's just IT, then probably there must be some online destinations where they hang out, some blogs that they read. So if you're able to target those and get in front of them and then like keep retargeting them, that's great.
Makes sense. We are kind of nearing time, so I'll now go to the most exciting section of the discussion, which is the rapid fire round. So Shri, I'll ask you questions, and I hope that because it's rapid fire, you can start answering them within 10 seconds of when the question gets over. Uh, so all set?
Yep.
So Shri, one thing you think you could have done differently while you were selling into the US?
Yeah. I would say maybe we've discovered this a little late, that the sales cycle itself, because we were an evangelistic product, and the customer did not know how to use things or hadn't used a similar product before. They were taking time to get set up, and they weren't in a customer facing role. They were not finding time to do that evaluation. So in a few months, we turned it into a much more assisted evaluation where we will build out the first template for them. We will the homework they needed to do was just sending us files of like example templates and so on, not actually building it out. So we helped them do the evaluation, and that really helped us win faster on some of these deals. We weren't doing that before. So I think understanding if your customer has the bandwidth to evaluate, is that a KPI for them or is it something they're doing on the side? One more thing is the person buying for us wasn't always like a VP. It was more like a head of implementation pitching it to a VP or someone else who had a budget. So helping them with the ROI case that they have to present internally was another thing we weren't doing well before, which we started doing. So I think if we had known these two things, we might have converted a lot more customers early, because we lost a lot of folks because they couldn't make the case internally. They loved the product, but they failed to make the case for the budget internally.
Got it. One thing you feel you and your team did exceedingly well while you were selling it to the US.
I think problem solving. I think from the beginning, we have been like doing our reviews really well. Every Tuesday, Thursday, we have our pipeline review meeting where we understand where things are stuck and we, brainstorm, okay, how do we unblock this deal? What should we be doing differently? Hey, we've lost 2 deals this way. So we, it wasn't like a team that had done all of this before, but I think we sort of did it fairly well, like 2 times a week, very intense.
Great. If there was just one simple advice that you would like to give founders who are planning to sell into the US, what would that be?
I would say, definitely see how you can look bigger than where you really are at. Don't go with the, hey, I'm just starting, I need feedback sort of a angle to get conversations. Take a more direct approach. Be proud of the value you're already delivering to others, and get people to react more to the ROI.
Makes sense. One simple advice to folks who are planning to start up.
I would say, we often do, and it depends on, not everyone does it this way, but for me, the years I've spent in my 2 startups are like the peak years of my life. And so, picking the right problem is the most important thing. Last time we picked a space which did not have enough momentum early on till we did the pivot. And I think so much, hustle, so much energy, so much of our team members, time went into it, but we didn't have the results to show. So really pick a problem that matters to people, really spend time validating before building, before writing a single line of code.
Awesome. Last question in this segment. Any podcast, movie, book that you've read or you've seen recently that you would recommend to our audience?
Not recently, but I would say one of the most impactful books for me, both professionally and personally, has been this book called Leadership and Self-Deception. Highly recommend everyone listening to this go and read that book. Noted.
We've actually, crossed the deadline. It's 2 minutes past 4:30. It's been an exhilarating discussion. As I'd already mentioned in all my social media posts, I actually walked back really illuminated and kind of energized. Thanks a lot, Shri, for taking time out. Really appreciate it. And I'm sure that every person who's listened to this discussion today, really must have felt that, those last 60 minutes were minutes that were well spent. So really appreciate your taking time out. Again, Shri, thanks a lot. And guys,
thanks a lot for having me on, Srini.
Thanks. And guys, one more really important thing, feedback is very, very important, not just for us, but also, it will help Shri. So we would be, floating feedback forms after this session. Kindly fill them up. It will help us, not only improve this discussion series, but it'll also help, Shri at his level. So that's one request from our end, and stay tuned to more such, invigorating discussions that will help you understand the entire B2B SaaS ecosystem better. Till then, goodbye. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.